You're listening to The Virgin Sex Educator, a podcast devoted to tackling the taboo and finding the connection between spirituality and sexuality. To submit your anonymous questions, click the link in my Instagram bio. Hello everyone, and welcome back to my LDS parenting series in connection with Sex Ed Rescue. I'm Nikki, your host, an active member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I've partnered with the incredible Kath Hakinson, who created sexedrescue.com, and I'm here to create LDS-specific episodes that explore many of the topics that Kath covers on her website. Now, for today, we are going to be talking about overall how we frame sexuality and spirituality and how to teach this in a way that really connects with the LDS faith. Whenever I am teaching any topic in the world of sexology, which covers a lot of different things, I always approach it from a value-based place. So for today's episode, I want to emphasize the importance of values in teaching anything within the world of sexuality within a framework of values, because that's really what we're trying to instill in our children, is what values we want them to have, because we have those and we live our values and they've brought us a lot of joy and a lot of happiness. So it's very natural and normal to want to pass that along to your children, and you ultimately believe that that is going to benefit them the most. So how do we get that messaging across in a non-fear-based, non-shameful way? Well, I have concluded that the first way to do it is to first understand what a value is. Because in understanding the definition of a value and the differences that there are between a value, a fact, and an opinion, we can actually better teach our children about the values that we have around the topic of the law of chastity. So before I even teach the law of chastity, if I'm ever teaching that lesson, which I do a lot, and I do it primarily to wards like in their church building, either on a fifth Sunday, I've been asked to teach a lot of those. Sometimes they'll have me do it on a week, like a Saturday night parent session. Other times I've just taught it as like a Sunday school class. I teach it in all different settings, and I teach it a lot within church buildings. So before I even enter the topic of the law of chastity or pornography, masturbation, anything like that, I need you to understand values and how all of these things that seem like untouchable subjects, that seem very scary and intimidating, and I have no idea how I'm supposed to broach that topic, how accessible they actually are when we look at it through a framework of our values. So let's first talk about what values are and what they are not. When we're looking at the commandments that God has given us, in their simplest form, they are a group of values that God has clarified for us. So God's commandments aren't just a list of to-dos or to-don'ts. They're God's way of showing us their values. And when we follow them, we're saying, hey, I value that too. So embodying these values help us learn to become like God, which we believe is the purpose of being here on earth. So if that is really important, then we better understand what a value actually is. Now, something that I really love doing is taking a concept or a word or an idea that we have heard in just one context or maybe familiar with it in just one specific context, and I like placing it into a different context to add more depth and more understanding. And so that's what I'm going to do with this word value. Now, I am not an artist. I wish I was. I very much admire artists and envy them in a way, because I wish I could draw, I wish I could paint. I am just an art appreciator. But with that being said, I don't know that much about art, because I myself I'm not inclined to pick up, a paintbrush. I am much more expressive through dance or through other ways of artistic ability, but something with a paper, anything that involves a paper and a pen or a tool of some kind, not my thing. Well, this is why putting it in the context of art is really eye-opening to me because I don't know a lot about art. But in art, they have the word value. And value is what creates contrast and helps us see what matters. Without it, a painting is just shades of the same thing. It's flat and unclear. Now, I highly recommend looking up a picture of a drawing without value and a drawing with value, so you can start to see what I'm talking about here. When I give this presentation to groups, I always have pictures, but because this is just audio, you're going to have to go look that up yourself. So a little homework for you. But moving on, in life, values do that same thing for us. They give us depth and meaning to who we are. Just like an artist learns to balance shading and depth to create beauty, we learn to balance our desires and our beliefs to create integrity. Another reason why I really love using artwork to talk about value and values that we have is because you can clearly see it. You can see the difference between a drawing or a painting that doesn't have value and one that does. And the same is true for us. Our values are shown to everyone around us, whether we like it or not. It depends on what your values are, but they are visible to others. They highlight parts of ourselves and put other parts in the background, and it allows people to see us for who we truly are, which is why it's so important to have any conversation around sex and sexuality in this framework, because we're teaching our children what we want them to put in the forefront and what can be in the background that can add depth to our character and to the beauty that we have as people. Now, going back to that last sentence that I said, that just like an artist learns to balance shading and depth to create beauty, we learn to balance our desires and beliefs to create integrity. This word create is such a great word to use when we're talking to our kids about sexual integrity, because we at our core are creators. And we can put this in a lot of different contexts, because maybe you're a creator in the sense that you, like an artist, can create art and painting and create depth through that. Maybe you do it through music or dance or woodworking. Maybe you create laughter and connection through an outgoing personality. Maybe you create comfort and belonging with the people that are around you. Or maybe you create teamwork and trust through leadership or sports. So when we're looking at our child, we want to be emphasizing all of the ways in which they are a creator, that they are able to create the environment that they live in, create the connections that they have, and that this is such a powerful gift that they have. Making sure to emphasize that what they choose to create is determined by their values. Values are the deepest beliefs that guide our decisions. They don't just tell us what to do, they tell us why we do it, which is even more important. Our values reflect what really matters to us, and it shapes the way that we live. Now, in order to understand what a value is, we have to first differentiate between a fact and an opinion, and then a value, because a lot of times those get confused. A fact is something that can be proven true or false. So an example of that would be a fact. 2 + 2 = 4. That can be proven true or false. An opinion is a personal thought, feeling, or preference. So, sticking with our math analogy here, my opinion is very much, math is hard. That is an opinion I've held for a very long time. I don't like math. I don't find it fun. But I have a friend who is currently getting her PhD, and she would very much have the opposite opinion. She loves math. She thinks it's so great. She, thinks it's wonderful and it helps her understand the world around her. Can't relate. But either way, these are opinions that we hold, right? Now, for my friend, she has an underlying value as well that very much contributes to her opinion. So a value is a deeper belief about what is important that guides our behavior. My friend very much values personal growth and learning. Those are things that she deeply believes is important to being the person that she wants to be. That's, why she's pursuing a PhD. It's not easy. It's not fun all the time. In fact, she very much says the opposite. But she values what it not only gives to her, but also how it can contribute to the world at large. The things that she's able to understand and study, and how those discoveries can really add to her field, is something that she values deep within her. And it's very admirable to me. I value learning and personal growth in other ways, but that is the underlying of why she does things and why she pursues the passions that she has. Another example would be, I grew up with parents that help others. That is a fact. My parents help other people, and this may be something that your children may learn from you, that you are kind and caring and you help other people. So that could be a fact that's in your family's life. Now, for my parents, that really came from this belief that they have and this opinion that people should do good unto others. They really believe that to their souls, but that is still an opinion. What they value is community. They believe to the deepest parts of themselves that we should support each other as brothers and sisters, and then they act on that belief, which we know that when we're talking about faith, that is an action word that takes action on our part. So really, when we value something, we're able to show our faith through our values. Hopefully you're sticking with me here. Values is kind of like this abstract concept, but thankfully for all of us, academics have given us 7 criteria that something must fit into in order for it to be a value. I think that these 7 criteria are so important for us to understand, especially as members of the Church of Jesus Christ, because it aligns so well with what we believe about agency. So listen to this. This is the 7 criteria for something to be considered a value. Number 1, it must be chosen freely. A person chooses it without pressure, coercion, or fear of punishment. That one alone, I think we can all get on board for, and we can start to see how this really connects to our beliefs, right? Chosen freely, without pressure, coercion, or fear of punishment. Number 2, this one is important. It must be chosen from alternatives. They consider several options before deciding. I think that is one that we really struggle with within the church. It's something that I have observed for a long time, where really well-intentioned parents don't want their children to make mistakes, and they don't want them to have to, deal with the pain that comes from making what they consider to be a wrong choice, and so they just eliminate the choice altogether, and they say, nope, this is how our family does things, this is what we're doing here, and you don't get a say in the matter because you were a child. That was very much the household I grew up in. That seems to be a very common theme amongst many households, and it's completely understandable, right? Like, you're doing your best to protect your children, but by taking away the choice, we aren't allowing our children to fully use their agency. Now, of course, we need it to be age appropriate, of course, and we're going to talk about that. And Kath does such a great job with all of the resources that she has to go through, age appropriate ways to speak to your children at ages 0 to 3 and, 3 to 5 and 5 to 10 and blah, blah, blah. Like it goes on and helps you conceptualize the different developmental stages and how to have these conversations, but also how to give your children autonomy, how to give them choices. And again, this goes back to that conversation in my first episode with, there's a lot of fear around giving choices, because what if they choose wrong, right? That's a really big fear, and it's understandable, because we may know the consequences of choosing incorrectly, of what we view as incorrect, but In order for something to be a value, which is what we're truly trying to teach our children, it must be chosen from alternatives. So we have to explain the alternatives. We have to explain all the different sides. And we can be encouraging of, the preference that we have and the values that you have as a family and as parents to your children. But you have to understand that your children, they are their own person. And we need to have respect for their ability to choose. And we also need to have more confidence in them in making choices that do align with your family values. Because statistically speaking, they will. If you are teaching them in a way that is showing them just through the way that you live your life, what these values look like and how they can make your life beautiful, your children are going to see that and they're going to desire it. They're going to want it because you make it look pretty desirable and wantable. You make it look pretty great to help out your neighbors because you seem to have a smile on your face when you do it. And you seem to be really at peace, and you make it seem actually really nice to pray and to commune with God in that way. I think you need to look at what you do and the way that you live your life and realize that your children are observing that. And we don't need to focus so much on the fear of if they don't, then it will look the exact opposite of this. But rather, this is something that means a lot to me, and I hope that it means a lot to you. But allowing them that choice and that understanding that there are other choices available so that they can have more power in their decision making. Number 3, it must be chosen after thoughtful consideration of consequences. They reflect on what will happen because of their choice, and they still decide that it's important to them. This can be really difficult as parents to give your children, the option to choose something. But by allowing them to practice that at such a young age and throughout their adolescence, you are really setting them up for so much success and trust in themselves. And when we're having a conversation about protecting our children, this is the best way to protect them, because children who know and understand their body and that it is theirs and that they do not owe, physical affection to anyone, and they know the correct anatomical terminology for their genitalia, and they know that they are capable of making choices regarding what they are going to do with their body and with who and when, because you've given them a lot of practice in very, very simple ways throughout their life, they are far less likely to become victims of sexual violence. That is a fact. If we are ultimately talking about protecting our children, they need to have confidence in their ability to choose for themselves how they interact with people. Something as simple as giving your child the choice of a high five, of knuckles, or of a hug when it comes to, yourself or a family member or something else. That is giving them these alternatives so they can have confidence in their choices, and that also their choices will be respected by those around them and by you as their parents. So we need to be instilling this from a very young age around bodily autonomy. Okay, going back to where we were listing all of the criteria for a value. Number 4 is it is prized and cherished. They feel good or proud about their choice. It aligns with their sense of self. Isn't that so great? And how true that is when we make a choice that we can be proud of. And for us, as members, we know that God is proud of us as well. When we make a choice with Christ, nothing feels better than that. We feel that we are aligned with who we truly are as children of God. Number 5, it must be publicly affirmed in order for it to be a value. They are willing to tell others or stand by it openly. They are not ashamed or secretive about it. The best way to teach this to your children is to live it yourself. That your values are things that you are very public about, that you speak about to them in your home, and that you live outside of your home. They will be able to see that and map that. And it honestly doesn't take a lot of verbal confirmation. It is something that is seen because it is who you are. It is a defining characteristic. The last two are that it must be acted upon. They behave in ways that show this value in action. And number 7, it must be acted upon repeatedly in order to be a value. It shows up consistently, not just once. It is a part of their pattern of living. If we say it and we don't do it, it is not a value. It must be acted upon consistently and repeatedly. If we follow it sometimes, but not always, it's not a value. Now, it's important to remember that values are aspirational. They are the rules that guide our lives. But just like a sports game that has a lot of rules that the players must obey, they're never going to do it perfectly. And even if they do, they might not score the goal or win the match. But they can know that they played an honest game and they did their best. And their love for the sport can grow regardless if it ends in a win or a loss. But ultimately, they learn how to become a good player. It takes faith and repentance, which we know is just change, to achieve our goals, to really hone in on our values and to live them daily. That takes a lot of repentance. That takes a lot of faith. But when it is coming from this place of integrity, of deep-rooted integrity, that we want to have sexual integrity, we want to be thoughtful in our choices, that we have weighed the consequences on both sides, that we are choosing from alternatives. And when we do choose, when we choose to live the law of chastity, and when we choose to have respect for ourselves and for others, and to have some self-restraint, that we're not doing it out of repression or just strict obedience to something. We're also not doing it out of, rebellion, but rather we're doing it because it's what we desire. So we want to encourage our children to pursue their desires. And of course, we're going to talk about that through all the different stages and different ways that they can do that in non-sexual ways to help them build those muscles and help them respect the desires that they have, because our desires are a roadmap to our values. I love what Dr. Jennifer Finlayson-Fife has to say about this. She says that our desires, non-sexually speaking, are compasses in our lives to what matter most. They show us what we value. When we don't take our desires seriously, we tend to be resentful and shrivel into depression. Desires aren't, I want it, so I get to have it. Instead, they help us exercise our self-defining muscle that is so important in adulthood. What we do in response to our desires is what matters. We want our children to learn how to bridle their desires, just like a horse, where you put a bridle on and you're able to direct it and channel it towards our goal. And the ultimate goal and the ultimate value that we want to teach and instill in our children is to value healthy, intimate relationships. That is the value. That is what we want the framework to be when talking about anything dealing with sexuality, is we want it to come from this place of spirituality, that we deeply value healthy, intimate relationships. That is our goal. That is what we are striving towards. And all these topics that we're going to talk about, masturbation, pornography, modesty, communicating with others, all of these things, we want to do it where we are channeling it towards the end goal. And we want the end goal to be stated very clearly and to be shown that we are helping you to develop healthy, intimate relationships. That's what we want for our children. And if we're going to go on this journey of helping them understand their sexuality and to be able to bridle it and channel it, we need to first know where we're channeling it to. And it is going to be the value of healthy, intimate relationships. So please join me next week where we're going to tackle some practical ways to teach this. So this is the underlying foundation that we are going to build everything upon. Okay, so next week we're going to talk about the law of chastity. We're going to be talking about a bunch of different topics that commonly come up and how, with this as our foundation, we can build upon it. I hope you all enjoyed. Please go and check out all of the resources on Sex Ed Rescue, and also go check out the Virgin Sex Educator on Patreon, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, on all the things. And have a great rest of your week.